Everybody's out here talking about the positives of the 2024 Chicago Bears, and you've heard them all, including on this podcast. So Nick and I decided, let's mix it up a little bit. Let's talk about the negatives. How bad are the worst parts about this Bears team? What should we be worried about going into 2024? And of those things that we should be worried about, how many of them might fix themselves and how many might need alternate solutions? We'll get into all of it on this episode of Bear With Us. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Bear With Us, a Chicago Bears podcast hosted by yours truly, Robert Schmitz, editor-in-chief of Da Bears blog, right here with my co-host Nick Whalen of Football Guys. And we've got a neat little idea for you today. Nick and I are positive people. Can't say that enough, because to the person who is first listening to this episode, first of all, thank you. We appreciate you. Thanks for checking this out. This is the Bears podcast that Nick and I pour our heart and soul into as we try to build the best blend of film watching and also analytics talking about the Chicago Bears. But Nick, it's hype season, right? Late May, early June. This is when the only posted shots you're going to see are shots like what we saw today. Caleb Williams throwing a long bomb to Braxton Jones, who falls. Stop me if you've heard that before. But he caught it. But he caught the touchdown because they don't want to post Tremaine Edmunds picking Caleb Williams off, right? Mm-hmm. Only positive vibes allowed. And how you doing? Let's start there, first of all.
Yeah, I have a positive, because this is, by the way, thanking people for listening and stuff. That's too positive, Robert. Remember, this is the negative episode.
No. That's the thing. I know you're joking. But what I think is fun about this, Nick, is that when people only talk about positive things, they leave room for people to freak out about some of the smallest little molehills. So this is you and me.
There's ranges of outcomes too. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's the same thing.
This is your and my opportunity to say how many mountains are out there and how many molehills are out there. Oh. And that thing that everybody keeps saying is a mountain, that's a molehill. That thing everybody keeps saying is a molehill, that might be a mountain. Yeah. And I think it'll be a fun show.
I think it's fun too. There's just too many positives in the beginning. But I have only one positive, okay?
Yeah.
And for the viewers that watch us on YouTube, you'll get a special treat here. And it is right here. This came today.
Yeah, it did.
Okay. And for people that can't see, all right, my license plates just came in. And for those that don't know, okay, we're going to be retiring the Fields 1 license plate that I had up here in Wisconsin. And we're now transitioning. Yeah, retiring, whatever. We're transitioning to Caleb 18.
Yeah, baby.
Baby. People get new jerseys all the time, Robert. You know, new players come in, they change numbers, etc. I'm changing license plates. This is what happens now.
Honestly, Nick, I can't applaud you enough for it. I think we get two very different ways of fanning here, where on your hand, especially because you live in Wisconsin, you've got some of the gaudiest and coolest ways to rep being a Bears fan. And then I haven't bought a Bears jersey since I bought Jay Cutler's jersey, because I said to myself, I'm going to buy them I'm going to buy the Bears quarterback that entrenches himself and makes it clear he'll be here for a while. And that has meant I have not spent my money.
Man, Cordell Stewart didn't make the cut, huh?
No, not in that case. But so
Greasy.
I'm kidding. We didn't get Greasy. Obviously, Mitch didn't work out. Then I wish Fields could have worked out. Hey, he's had some sweet pictures in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform, but I'm really excited for this one, man. And if you don't mind, let's just start hot. Okay,
yeah, let's go.
Biggest negative that we've seen talked about on Twitter between yesterday and today. And I'm picking that one because, Bears fan, it's topical. Nick and I will go through a laundry list, a 95 theses per se, of different things that we see that might be problems within the Bears structure. But everybody's talking about Nate Davis. They're talking about how he didn't play in practice yesterday. He was limited in practice today, switched out with Ryan Bates. When you think about the Bears' current right guard, how worried are you?
With Nate Davis specifically, I'm not that worried. I don't think it's a mountain. And it would be more of a mountain, and we'll get to this later, teaser, if we didn't have Ryan Bates and Coleman Shelton. Because our depth inside, we can sustain more this year than in past years. But Ryan, or I keep messing up his name all the time.
Is it
I
Coleman
want to call
Shelton?
him. No, no, no. I want to mess up his name all the time. Nate Davis, because it's like two first names to me all the time. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, because
You
Nate
have two
Davis,
last names and you have two first names.
right,
Nate Shelton and Davis Coleman makes a
right,
lot
right.
more sense.
Yeah, it'd be easier for me. Um, he practiced today. And we have a sample size that's small. And again, people forget this other part. And actually, I corrected one of my buddies that's in the fantasy industry. I'm really good friends with, by the way. And he didn't know this. He had a high ankle sprain at the end of the year.
Oh
High
yeah.
ankle sprains take forever to recover from. And if you look at it, the previous 3 years, he was a top 25 guard in the NFL per PFF for 3 years, not for 1 year, not for a stretch of 5 games, for 3 years. So I'm not, I mean, to me, that's a molehill. If we're only using those two, I'm a molehill on Nate Davis right now.
I tend to agree with you. It's not just because I'm a hyper positive person. It's because I think the hardest pill for most football fans to swallow. And Bears fan, if you're listening to me, this to me is what changed me from somebody who thought he knew a lot about football to somebody who really started living, dwelling in different parts of football, which is going to sound arrogant, but follow me on this. Nick, the hardest part in the NFL to grasp is the talent scarcity, is how rare a talent like Nate Davis is. And Bears fan, if you heard that, you might have think I just said Nate Davis is a rare talent. I'm saying even middling offensive linemen are very hard to find. You can't just walk down to the superstore a couple blocks away and hand a $10 million a year contract to a Nate Davis like player and expect what, top 25 you said? PFF called him a top 25 guard. That guy, without the Nate Davis like question marks that you get with not only injury, but also we kind of knew going into his free agency offseason that he didn't like to work out. None of this is unusual. It's just annoying. But had he been a more consistent player, had he been a cultural leader, had he been this displacement heavy guard that was also outstanding protecting the passer, Nick, well, then you never would have gotten him for only $10 million a year. We've got guards making 20 a year. And so there's part of me that looks at it and is trying to give off I hope this makes sense. It's like a blend of 2 points. On one hand, you get what you pay for. You're paying for a starting level guard with problems. You're getting a starting level guard with problems right now. But also on the other hand, Nick, to your point, none of this is out of character for Nate Davis. And that didn't usually result in problems outside of last year, which was the worst personal year of Nate Davis's life for varying reasons that I don't think you and I need to dissect. Until the point where Davis is clearly and obviously hurt again, I'm not worried yet. Because right now it's par for the Nate Davis course. Annoying? Absolutely. But it is where, like you're saying, I am calmed down a little by the fact that if the starting offensive line in 2024, for some reason, is Braxton Jones, going left to right, Braxton Jones, Tevin Jenkins, Coleman Shelton, Ryan Bates at that right guard spot, and Darnell Wright, it is a better offensive line than we had last year with pretty much the same depth. And that's losing a starter. If Nate Davis plays at a basic starting level, the line gets that much deeper. So the bar's not that hard to clear for him to move from mountain to molehill territory here.
And the other part of this too, y'all, is so Montez Sweat didn't practice yesterday. And I had fun with some Bears fans on Twitter because they're like, "Oh, well, Nate Davis missed," and blah blah.
Starting defense didn't practice
like,
a couple days ago.
Yeah, exactly. Montez Sweat didn't either. Yeah, but he's proven he's such a great player. I'm like, well, okay. I mean, so did Davis a while ago, but still, like, it's June OTAs. 2 different players missed a practice, but we view one of them as, oh my gosh, get rid of this guy. He's terrible. Like all of the stuff that you see on Twitter versus the other one. They're like, well, it's okay. They both missed a practice and it's not training camp. And there's some guys that aren't even there. I think Keenan Allen wasn't even there today. Like no one's bringing that up. It's just like, oh, okay, not a big deal. But with Nate Davis, everything is a huge deal and it shouldn't be.
And dude, at the risk of sounding boring, take another look at those contracts. Montez Sweat is paid like the Bears desperately want him to be a leader. And he is. I mean, you could make a joke about how they're paying 21 for on field and maybe 4 million for him being an off field and in locker room leader. I'm obviously being tongue in cheek, but you could fit 2.5 Nate Davis contracts in that Montez Sweat contract.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that money governs everything, but again, this is well in range of what we've seen Davis do for years. It just bit us last year in Chicago. We need to see him improve. I can't say this enough, everybody. We need to see him improve. But if he was killing it in OTAs, it wouldn't make me feel better about how he's going to play in September, especially because what I care about is what he's going to look like in camp at a minimum. OTAs don't mean much to me for an offensive lineman.
Nope. So I'm going to pivot slightly because Nate Davis was disappointing as a free agent signing last year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he was the biggest disappointment in terms of free agent signings. To me, that's Tremaine Edmunds. So Tremaine Edmunds goes from superstar level, top 5 linebacker level from Buffalo to last year. Oh boy. Now, again, he had some picks towards the end of the year that helped out a little bit. Man, he did not play well. We know that he doesn't do well in terms of blockers getting to him, but coverage, tackling, being in the right spot, like again, we use PFF a lot. I think it's because a neutral ground. So let's just say where
It's an
he's
attempt
at.
at a second opinion, which
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
awfully neat.
Yep. Yeah. He was 70th out of 82 linebackers. Okay. Now, if we go back to the guy that everyone's worried about, he was 58th out of 79 guards. So even the worst of what Nate Davis was in terms of the rank in the NFL was still starter level, right? 32 teams, 2 guards, 64. You go down here, Edmunds was 70th. That's not even starter level there. So I think for what he gets paid, we just talked about that, right? Especially for a linebacker, he needs to pick up his pace. And that's one thing that I'm worried about heading into this year, Robert, is because I'm sure we'll get into this because the D tackles weren't beefed up. We didn't get your boy Chris Jones that we heard about, all season.
Right.
We didn't get your boy in the first round that you wanted to. There's another. Well, I'm sure we'll get to, but there's more that we didn't add to that, and we'll get to that. But to keep people off of Edmunds, I think that's a big story. That if he bounces back, that's something that could take this defense to the next level without even talking about a pass rush.
I'm going to get to what I think about Roma Dunze in my third one. So when I take the reins over, we'll talk about it because it's important for me to point out that I just didn't think the Bears were going to get Roma Dunze. I really didn't. I never allowed myself to think that he was going to get past 8. And so the most unusual pick possible at 8 pushed him to 9. And we love Atlanta for that. Thank you, Atlanta. But so back to what you're talking about. Look, there's an old football slogan with the acronym LLT PLJ that I don't think we need to state out loud because I don't particularly love the messaging, but it does describe Tremaine Edmunds perfectly. You know what I'm talking about, Nick? And so within that, it's like he's very soft against the run. Like Tremaine Edmunds hates getting blocked. And for a 6'4" person with that kind of arms, if he wanted to, if he had Fred Warner's, let's call it determination to get to the runner, that guy could be the best linebacker in football. He just doesn't at his core want to do it.
You know who he reminds me of? And again, people are going to take offense to this. I hope they don't. Like, this is meant in just a comparison way. He's kind of like Brian Urlacher. Urlacher is more athlete than he is, I'm going to go run through this block and then fill this run lane. And that's what made him amazing because he was 6'4" and could do the back third in Tampa 2, as well as cover sideline to sideline and make a bunch of tackles. I think Urlacher is more physical than Edmunds is. But in terms of a comparison, it's like a huge guy that's a freak athlete that can do everything. It's kind of what I see them as.
And the good news for a guy like Edmunds, I really mean this. Like, I have no idea whether to call Edmunds a molehill or a mountain, because part of me, Nick, looks at this and is like, well, we're pretty much getting what anybody should have expected from Tremaine Edmunds. You brought up his PFF grade. I will warn you that I know a guy who's really tight with PFF. He's not there anymore, but he mentioned even while he was there that the linebacker grades are a shot in the dark at best. Okay. That linebacker grades at PFF are just messy because linebackers get asked to do a million different things. But to your point, Nick, teams were targeting, where is Andrew Billings? Run away from him. And if Tremaine Edmunds is there, even better. because the moment that they could combo block, say, Justin Jones, and especially when, especially when it was like not DeMarcus Walker, whoever was playing across from him. So if you could get, at the time, it was like Dom Rob and Justin Jones on one side of the
Oh
ball,
my
and you could
gosh.
combo block up to Tremaine Edmunds, you're talking an almost immediate 8-yard gain, Nick. I mean, it was not
Bad.
awesome for the Bears, but it was tough stuff for what they had to
Mhm.
deal with. If you can keep Tremaine Edmunds clean, he is really dangerous side to side. And we saw it because he had the opportunity to make some exceptional tackles for loss and huge tackles in major points of games. But Nick, you kind of mentioned this. For the first 7 weeks of the season, he couldn't tackle either. And so those
Nope.
tackles of opportunity and getting broken turned into huge first downs became a real problem. As the defense started to experience the Montez Sweat effect, Tremaine Edmunds' ability to match eyes in coverage and play with, I think he's got solid eyes in zone. I think he's got solid feet in zone. He knows what he's doing and guards a lot less grass than a lot of linebackers that I have personally studied. And that has value. The question, Nick, is that $18 million worth of value?
Right.
I
Right.
don't think it ever was, but I'm trying not to spit in the eye of the Bears fan that loves seeing a big, tough looking linebacker
Right.
fly around in coverage and pick off passes. In a world where the Bears, one way or another, find some upgrades to their front seven and Tremaine is able to play more of a coverage specific role, I think that they will get Roquan Light like play out of
Yes.
him patrolling the middle of the field.
Yes.
But it
Mhm.
is an icing player, not cake. And as long as we're all on the same page there, there's
Mhm.
nothing to worry about. But the moment you start asking Tremaine Edmunds to be your field tipper, I think you're going to get disappointed. Does
Yep.
that make sense?
No, we're on the same page there. It's like, because you could see TJ Edwards didn't make a few plays, mainly in coverage because of his athleticism, which we knew, but he was still basically the same player that you saw at another team. But Edmonds was a huge disappointment.
Especially because of the money. I mean,
Mhm.
TJ Edwards making about a third of what Tremaine Edmunds does, and TJ Edwards is kind of similar to Jack Sanborn. He's a great blitzer. He plays way above his weight in the run game. He has all of that want to you could look for. Jack Sanborn makes tackles that his body shouldn't make because he can hit a shoestring tackle off of, I don't know what else to call it other than the will to win. Right? Like, Nick, you've seen it in high school. I'm sure some linebackers will just will their way into making a play that they should not make. Schematically, they should be sealed off. They just
Oh,
find a way to make it anyways.
well,
TJ Edwards.
I have players from all over that do that stuff. The one, okay, there's, oh man, here I'm gonna add a positive in here. Okay, for
Positives are
the
allowed.
here's how I'll frame it. For the Bears fans that love Tremaine Edmonds and think that he could bounce back, here's an option. His D-line coach in Buffalo, where he thrived in 2022, is now the defensive coordinator in Chicago. So if you're gonna maybe like, oh hey, I remember if we did this, this front, it's gonna help Edmonds, or we're gonna do this twist, this blitz, this whatever. Eric Washington will know, and that could help Edmonds as well.
I really think a lot of the blitz stuff they did in the middle of the season helped Edmonds a lot. I think
Yep.
Edwards is one of the best blitzers from depth that I've personally watched. I'm sure there's better, but Edwards has this knack, I know you saw it, Nick, of sitting on his heels, suggesting that he's about to drop into coverage,
Mhm.
and then firing forward while being 5 yards off the ball. And he caught the Lions in particular, just parting the seas a couple
Yep.
times for him to come straight down the pipe at Jared Goff. He even did it he did it against the Vikings a couple times. That guy can blitz.
That's being a veteran,
And so can
having
Edmonds.
experience.
Edmonds actually a pretty solid blitzer too. You're kind of wasting him the
Well,
moment that you blitz him.
what is your Roma Dunze take? I'm very curious on this.
Let me edge into a negative that I've seen people talk about on Twitter. So some of these, Nick, are actual negatives, and some of these are
Okay.
perceived negatives.
Okay.
Is it a problem that Keenan Allen might be a rental? Because as we're seeing Justin Jefferson get his contract, a reporter sought out Keenan Allen for comment, and he said, price of the wide receiver market's going up. And there's a couple people inferring that he wants to get paid. And to me, Nick, the best part about the Keenan Allen choice is that the Bears didn't spend a second rounder. They didn't spend a first rounder. They spent a fourth rounder. At the end of the day,
Yep.
they're leveraging an excess of 2024 cap space to make this move work. And if he ends up being a 1-year player for whatever reason, whether that's injury, whether that's he simply doesn't want to be here, whether that's he proves it in Chicago, it goes awesome, and they let him walk, the Bears have secured and insured Caleb Williams' future because they drafted a top 10 receiver that I don't think should have been there at 9 in the first place. And so, sure, of course, I could talk about how great it is that you get Rome Odunze, talented player, very similar body type to Keenan Allen, that he can learn from Keenan himself and learn how to get open in those short spaces that Rome, I don't want to say he struggled, but it wasn't his strong suit in Washington. But at the same time, Nick, I can't help but think that Keenan, whether he's here for multiple years or whether he's here for just one, he was brought in to help Caleb Williams transition out of being a rookie quarterback.
Yeah.
This is the job. So to me, this is the ultimate molehill take where I say, what does Keenan do at 32, 33, 34, 35 years old? I will worry about that later. We have 1 year on our minds, and it is Caleb Williams' rookie season. What happens after that? Anyone's guess. Sure, maybe the wide receiver market will mean that DJ Moore's extension could be bank breaking. But you know what, Nick? That won't bother me. And if we end up getting one great year out of Keenan Allen, so be it. But to me, he was brought in here to transition Caleb this year. And whether or not the Bears get their money's worth on a future capital, that's where you look back and you say, we're talking about a 4th round pick. It's fine. Right. But that's how I feel.
In a down class, by the way. You know what's interesting is I had this debate with Bill Zimmerman today. Unexpectedly, he talked about, because I think someone asked him what the contract would look like. And he said, well, someone had brought up the franchise tag. He's like, we're not going to do the franchise tag. We shouldn't. He says, I think if he has a solid year and stays healthy, he'll want something like 2 for $50. And then, a DJ extension, as you said, coming, maybe the year after. He thinks that it needs to be closer to 2 to 40 or something like 2 to 36, 2 years, 36 million for the Bears to bring him back. And I kind of came back at him because I'm not sure it would be that expensive. I know we think it could be, but let's take Mike Evans. Okay. So Mike Evans, I mean, unbelievable career, y'all. For those that aren't following, 1,000 yards every year, no matter what, no matter the quarterback, no matter if he's healthy or not. He turns 31 soon, and he signed, I know people see 2 years, $52 million. That's not real money, y'all. It was 2 years, $41 million, $11 million in incentives. And the incentives I looked, Robert, it's like $250,000 for every playoff win. $3 million if he gets 70 catches, 1,000 yards, and 10 touchdowns. He has to do all 3 of those in 2025. And then, like, there's all these, like, he has to be top 10 in whatever category. It's like, maybe, but like, I looked at them, I'm like, likely not. So if it's 2 for 41, that's 20.5 for a 31-year-old, and Allen's going to be 33. And this is my response to Bill. I said, it comes down to 3 things, whether Keenan Allen comes back or not. And I said, how Chicago does in 2024, because if Chicago plays poorly, Keenan isn't coming back, y'all. Why would he, the remainder years of his career not be with a team playoff bound, winning playoff games, etc. How Allen does in 2024, because if he gets a good vibe with Caleb, he's in with Shane Waldron, right? Like, he's got a niche in the offense. He's going to want to stay because he could be that slot guy, and you could have Rome and DJ on the outside. It would work. And the other one is the asking price of Allen. If he wants 25, 27 million a year, Chicago won't even consider it. But if he's like,
no
what?
Chance.
Yeah. Like, because and if he doesn't care how his numbers are, right? Like, to me, if Chicago this year has 3 900-yard receivers, okay, we're not even gonna go over 1,000, 3 900, good for me. I'm good with it, because that means that Caleb's crushing it, in my opinion. Because Komet's going to get his, and Swift's going to get his, and Everett's going to get some, and Tyler Scott will get some, etc. So, to me, like, if Keenan's okay with not trying to get 1,200 receiving yards, or basically have the DeAndre Hopkins end of his career that he's having in Tennessee right now, he wanted to get paid, he wants to get up numbers, and he's on a bad team. If you want that, Keenan, you're not going to come back to Chicago. But so I think that's interesting in terms of the dynamic of if Keenan comes back or not. I know that works with the development of Rome, but I also think it doesn't really matter.
I agree. I think at the end of the day, the best thing is so not all contentious relationships are implicitly problematic. Because on one hand, yeah, I know everybody wants to envision their locker room as this group of happy-go-lucky dudes that are all just excited to be there. But Nick, this is Keenan Allen proving to the Bears and the league that he's still got more in the tank, and this
Mhm.
is the Bears proving to Keenan Allen that this is where, at the end of the day, he wants to finish his career. And
Yep.
whichever makes the stronger statement has a better shot of getting their way. With
Mhm.
Keenan, that means potentially getting more money on the open market. With the Bears, that means potentially convincing Keenan Allen to take an equitable deal. They're never getting him to take like vet minimum. But to your point,
No.
Nick, if he's down to take 15, $18 million for the next 3 years each year, okay, at least there's a conversation. I
Yeah.
doubt it, but at least there's a conversation.
Yeah.
So I
He,
can't help
he
look. Yeah,
he's made 110 million in his career. Like, I know it's like, well, they all want to get paid, and I get that one, but also like this is the twilight. Like some receivers don't make it here. If he gets, if you guarantee him, Robert, 30 million, and it's 15, 15, 15, or something like that, but then there's some incentives on top of that, that could entice him to stay.
it could. It could. And the
Did,
incentive stuff is always murky. How that affects the cap ban, sometimes I don't
yeah.
know.
Did,
But
did you see the Ryan Poles interview with Adam Schefter?
I saw parts of it.
Okay. So there was a part where it's like, okay, this offseason, what, like you knew Caleb, and the Justin debate, et cetera. But he's like, what surprised you? And he's like, oh, Keenan Allen was one. So like I think that was a move he didn't see coming. And which I think actually adds into this too. Cause it's like he wasn't even adding this into the calculation. I think it was trying to get Rome because if you didn't get Keenan, I think he was going to trade up for Rome. But like, I think he was working on that, which okay, that makes sense having those two. But then Keenan was just as you were talking about before with Edmunds, it was icing to this whole thing. And like that's
Oh
how
yeah.
we have to view it. I don't care about the money. I don't care about the fourth round pick. This dude's a Hall of Famer, and it's just icing at this point.
It's great. I mean, it really is great. And so
Mhm.
I can't help looking at this, and I think it helps to set the Bears up for the future. I know
Mhm.
there are negatives. This is the same conversation to me as people saying, well, if DJ Moore has another 1,400 yards, he's gonna break the Bears off. And I say, I hope he does. I mean,
Sure.
we are wishing for hard to solve problems, but they're good problems to solve. Nick,
Mhm.
what are we gonna do if Caleb Williams throws for 5,000 yards and now we have to pay Tyler Scott? Let's throw for the 5,000 yards first. I mean, obviously, I'm
I'll
being
I'll be
hyperbolic there.
rocking the streets with these license plates like crazy up here in Wisconsin if that happens.
Obviously, I'm being
Do
hyperbolic
do
on purpose there, but I think you get it.
yeah. Do you wanna hear my funniest one? So by the way, y'all, so like we talked
Yes.
about this episode today. Robert came up with this idea, which I thought was a great idea.
Thank
I
you.
came up with 16 different negatives, right? Or potential negatives. Here's my favorite one that's gonna make you laugh, Robert, okay?
Hmm.
And we can spend maybe 1 or 2 minutes on it. Cairo Santos is 5'8", 175 pounds. He's a little dude, okay? This new kickoff rule, man, I don't see him making tackles. Maybe this is a negative. What if there's a big return because Cairo can't make the tackle? Do we have to get Tory Taylor in there because he's big and he's 6'4"?
That's a hilarious thought. I mean, to be fair, I also don't know how this is all going to work out with the kickoff rules. I mean, you're already seeing some coaches say that they're not going to have their kicker out there for designated kickoffs, and I can't help thinking, first of all, that's probably a little too far, but at the same time, if punters want to make themselves valuable, you better believe that punters who aren't place kickers may learn to kick the ball off the tee and get it within that little band that they have to get it to, because now you don't have to
Mhm.
push it back out of the end zone. So at that point, I mean, if I was Nick, I'm trying to think about this from the perspective of a place kicker will always have value insofar as they're able to drill 60 yarders to win games. Everybody knows that. But the moment that a punter allows you to be a 6'4", can tackle, also can do your kickoff
Yeah.
specialty, and punts the ball. Look, if I'm that punter's dad, I'm in that kid's ear going, no, this is marketable. This is how we get onto an
Yeah.
NFL football team.
Dude, did you know Tory Taylor is bigger than Patrick Scales?
No.
I mean, again, this is maybe this is turning into a positive. I'm sorry, Rob. Positive for Tory Taylor. So Patrick Scales, again, longest tenure Bear. We love him. 6'3", 226. Tory Taylor 6'4", 232.
My
Big boy.
goodness, man.
Big boy.
What
I
a
mean,
big old
maybe
dude.
backup linebacker. Maybe backup tight end. We'll just use him
Backup
every
tight
week.
end, backup linebacker. You know when you're talking about that you're already feeling really
He
good.
went to Iowa. They get tight end you, man.
But
All right,
so
go to your next one. I thought that was a fun
give me
one.
your next one. What's your because I can go with my next one, but my next one's like an actual negative. It's like an
Okay,
it's like an
okay.
actual problem.
So I'll dive into this one because it's one we kind of touched on a little bit, is center. So, oh my gosh, the last 3 years at center have just been horrendous, y'all. We know this. Last year they couldn't even snap the ball well in shotgun. It was ridiculous. So they signed Coleman Shelton,
Mhm.
1-year deal, reasonable, and then trade for Ryan Bates, which I like both of the moves. They're both very bargain binish, right?
Right.
Coleman Shelton, 1 season as a solid center in the NFL with the Rams. They didn't bring him back. Why would that be? Right? Otherwise, in his career, he's been kind of bad. Then Ryan Bates, it's been decent in limited playing time. That, again, I don't know that that's fixed. And that was something I know we talked about trying to get, Jackson Powers Johnson, some of the other centers that we liked in the draft. This is a Band-Aid. And what if this Band-Aid doesn't work?
If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, right? Like that's just a risk you take. The problem that we're seeing across the NFL, I know you've seen it, Nick, is that there is no such thing as the middle class center anymore, right?
Mm-mm.
I mean, there's just not a lot of Ethan Pocheats out there. There's the 7th rounder, 6th rounder that sucks, but he sucks for cheap, right? This is the Mustafa line of center. Or you have your Creed Humphrey, you have your Tyler Linderbaum, you have your Jason Kelsey does not count. Jason Kelsey fits into the first definition. He just
Hall of
happened
Famer.
to be a Hall of Famer. No, wait, he's a 3rd-round pick. So that counts as some investment. But it's funny, man. You look across the league, there's a lot more Garrett Bradburys than you think there are that were high investment centers that ended up being fine. Like Lloyd Cushenberry is a 3rd-round pick. That's a good 3rd-round pick. He leaves and you don't get to keep him. And so if you can do what the Rams have done, because a lot of teams are doing this. This was the Ravens' plan before Linderbaum. This was the Rams' plan after I cannot remember the guy's name. Who's the Chicago guy that all of Chicago wanted to sign before he signed with somebody else and then played terribly?
Ooh, no clue.
Anyways, he was a Ram.
Where did he go to college?
He was the Ram for a while. He was a free agent. Anyways, if we've just forgotten his name, we've just forgotten his name. But he ended up going back to the Rams, and then he played badly enough that Shelton had to start. But so all this to say, I look at Shelton, I look at Bates, and I think between the two of them, I would be surprised if we get another Cody Whitehair, Lucas Patrick. Maybe that's just because I really don't like Lucas Patrick and Cody Whitehair that much. If you asked me that, Nick, I'd tell you you're right. But Ryan Bates,
Allen?
it was Allen.
Okay.
But so Ryan Bates is much more athletic than Cody Whitehair was. Coleman Shelton is much faster than I think Sam Mustafa was, and he's got the starting experience to prove it. Where I can tell you right now, Nick, what the worst case scenario is. The worst case scenario to me feels like Coleman Shelton playing. What is Coleman Shelton? Well, he's somebody who is fast enough to get to his spot in almost any scenario, and from there he will get overpowered unless he's engaging a linebacker type at the 2nd level. But now you know what he can and can't do. Now you're not going to ask any questions. Now you're not going to hope that he holds up at the point of attack because you simply know he won't. So if Shane Waldron knows what he's doing, and I imagine he does, or he wouldn't advocate for signing the guy, that at that point they'd just switch to more wide and outside zone, and you'd live with what you live with. But we'll see. I mean, let's be real, Nick. It's been bad at center for a little bit.
Right. I mean, the Rams are switching to duo and getting downhill, and they're getting some big physical guys. So I get that one. But yeah, I think it's still a valid concern because it's like we don't have, you could argue anyone in the interior there. We can still talk about it, but like it's we don't have the cemented block pieces yet. And that's unsettling for a rookie quarterback that you don't want him to have pressure.
Right. And of course, we don't want him to have pressure. But I have some bad news, Nick.
Uh-oh.
You're going to. Maybe not. We obviously hope not down to down pressure. We obviously hope it's not every single third down you're going to get heated up. But this is written on the walls of the prison cell that every defensive coordinator woke up in one day when it came to how do I put a rookie quarterback in hell. This metaphor didn't really work.
I thought you had breaking news. You're like, I have bad news. Like, okay, we got something breaking.
No.
Someone got injured.
I'm more talking about like when you first get your uniform and your badge at any NFL place, there's a book that says, how do I beat a rookie quarterback? And the answer is pressure him.
Yep.
Like this is not.
Minnesota's coming. I'm telling you.
Oh, to more than just Minnesota. The Lions are going to send Brian Branch. The Packers.
Well, their new defense. You know what fixes all of this? Digressing back 10 minutes. Keenan Allen.
Keenan Allen helps. A center that can get in the way helps. I don't care if you're taking a charge. Take it. Right? Yeah. It's these centers like Lucas Patrick and Cody Whitehair, where Cody Whitehair snaps the ball and he can't stand up. And then Lucas Patrick tries to stand up and loses his balance. I mean, as much as you and I, Nick, I like to hope you and I aren't kings of hyperbole here. The centers have been hyperbolic. The centers have been like play yakety sax kind of like background montage, right? Like it's been that bad. So I understand Bears fans feeling scarred when it comes to this position. It's still a studs and duds position league, and Ryan Poles clearly thinks that it's a position he can get away with some duds at. We'll see if he's right. This is one of the bigger gambles that Ryan Poles has taken on this roster. It is what it is.
What's your next one?
Defensive line. I think a lot of people.
I knew you were going to go. I was waiting for you, man.
I think a lot of people are hoping that Gervon Dexter becomes a very big thing, and he simply hasn't proven it yet. I like Gervon Dexter, and I keep getting his name wrong, so I apologize. Thank you to the email that we got the other day that pointed out that I keep using a hard G. Everybody else has settled on a J. Gervon Dexter has flashed a lot of fun things as a pass rusher, which when it comes to how we project three techs going forward, Nick, there are a lot of guys that can play the run, especially the older they get in the league. There are not a lot of guys that can rush the passer. If you did have to choose one, you would prefer that Gervon did exactly what he did. But you can't be this bad in the run game. I mean, Dexter's barely playing one gap well, let alone when he gets double teamed. And that just can't continue. You won't get play time if that continues. So if the Bears end up with a Gervon Dexter that can't play the run, well, who's next? They just lost Justin Jones, who was their 500 snap a season guy, and I'm not trying to stand for Justin Jones. I'm fine moving on from him. They're just not proven in the interior. Do I think Byron Murphy would have improved it? Dude, I don't know. Byron Murphy was as much a future play as anybody else was, but everybody keeps talking about their edge rush need, which is real. They also need a second edge, but they're so unproven on the interior that right now, I believe, Nick, the easiest way I can phrase this to people is that they are an Andrew Billings injury away from really getting smoked on or between the tackles in the run game. And if that happens, I don't quite know how their defense adjusts.
Yeah. I mean, you could have some hope for Zach Pickens too, but he was developmental.
But we know he's not going to play the run well. Like he can do one gap and that is it. The moment you ask him to do more than that, I think you're just playing him out of position. The simplest way I could put this, but it's obviously hyperbolic, Nick, is I wouldn't play Kyler Gordon at defensive tackle. Duh. Right. But there's a point where you need to know your player. And I know you've seen this because you've coached high school ball, and high school ball is notorious for playing players wrong, where you line a player up and it's like, why did you think he was going to win outside? He's never going to win outside. And Zach Pickens, to me, is a blatant and obvious 3-tech, if not a 4-eye kind of guy. And so I would rather see him rotate with Dexter. I would be quite assuaged if the Bears signed a big dude that takes up space in the interior to truly back up and spell Andrew Billings. But that's my fear of injury because Billings just played 17 games, and that seems unlikely to happen again. Last time I did that, it was with Akeem Hicks, and it didn't
Oh
happen
boy,
in
no.
2019.
No, let's have some fun real quick. Okay,
Give it to me.
let's have a little trivia or quiz for Robert. Robert, besides Andrew Billings and Jervon Dexter and Zach Pickens, which was 2 seasons, Zach, can you name the other D tackles on the Bears roster right now?
Okay. So you already mentioned Zach Pickens, Jervon Dexter, and Andrew Billings. You're saying
Yep.
it's more? There's
Yeah,
more?
just can you name any of the others? There's 4 others.
There's 4 others? They
Uh-huh.
have to be UDFAs and future reserve contracts, right?
Yeah,
Then,
mainly.
then I will confidently tell you that no, I cannot name any of them.
There's one that you know. I'll give you a hint, okay?
Uh,
Played at Illinois last year.
do I know this guy?
Came in for a visit,
Right, but
but a local visit, but played next to
no, I
I
really
think
think I don't remember him. Like I should have known him from the draft spot.
Keith Randolph.
Cool. That's
Okay.
great.
Byron Coward is one.
Okay.
Deshaun Mallory, I don't know him at all. And then this guy, Michael Doomfor, is the other D tackle. That's all we have. So, as you said, we need, and I don't even care if this is the end of the career, Ted Washington, Keith Traylor, you're just, it's goal line, go in there. Like we need someone with beef. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, you need a little bit of help here for your 4th and 1 and your jumbo sets, right? Where they bring on a bunch of guys, they want to mug you over, get
Yep.
1 yard, and if your 3 tech gets stood up, you gave it up very quickly.
No.
And I like Jervon. I can't say this enough. The moment that Jervon Dexter turns into Chris Jones, obviously a lot of my worries just fall by the wayside.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's fair. Given what we saw right now, I think it's worth being worried and cautiously optimistic, of course, but saying maybe if we could get one more guy in or something like it, we can be sure we're covered going into a season that if maybe Nick, you feel differently. I think the 2024 season, the longer we wait, the more critical it feels to the Ryan Poles overall plan. Because interestingly enough, this season doesn't have to work a certain way. But if it does, he will gain all of the interior tailwind that will allow him to do whatever he wants with impunity. If he doesn't, if things break away from him, if this defensive line gives up 5.5 yards per carry next year, then Caleb Williams' rookie season might look a little more troubled, not because of anything other than they lose some games, right? And then at that point, you need the 2025 season to work a certain way very successfully. If in 2024, you not only make the playoffs, but you win a playoff game, Nick, by hook or by crook. I mean, whether that means you traded for a Jonathan Allen type or not, you win a playoff game, George McCaskey's going to extend you. You get to take a breather. You get to focus on building a winning football team. And to me, and I know you know this way too closely, Nick, the moment a coach gets to stop playing politic and start focusing on football, they become a much better coach.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because you're not looking behind you. So there are some things that can help a D tackle. You know,
yes, there are.
DeMarcus Walker can play in there. But then the other part that we didn't even talk about, I think just goes into this is defensive end. Defensive end. These are 2 different topics, but starter defensive end opposite of Sweat is one of my points. The other one is defensive end depth. And the next one I said it was, what if Dexter and Pickens don't take a step? So I'll just highlight all those that we covered them because they're all super relevant. Because yes, Walker can go inside and help pass rush and help, 3 tech. He can't play 1 tech, y'all. And so, by the way, we keep saying that. Let's just go through this quickly. These are the techniques, which means the stances, stances where they align on the offensive line. Okay, if you're head up on the center, 0, you are shaded to one side of the center, at like half of their body. Okay, let's talk about like that. One half of their body, one way or the other. That's a 1 technique. Okay, the inside half of a guard, that's a 2-eye. If you are head up on the guard, that's a 2. You're outside of the guard, the outside half, that's 3 technique, right? So we talk a lot of times in the 4-3, right? Over, under, fronts, etc. You're gonna have a 1 because they're gonna be in that A gap. Then you're gonna have a 3, and then they're gonna be in that B gap. And then you'd have 4 eyes inside shade of the tackle. 4 is head up, 5 is outside shade, and then on from there. You could be 7, you could be wide 9, etc. So what we're talking about is really this interior of the 3 tech. You're not going to get double teamed a lot. That's why Pickens and these lighter
Right.
DNs like Walker, they can sustain in there. But Billings, he's short, squatty, right? Low center of gravity. He can do the 1 tech. Akeem Hicks could do the 1 tech, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need another beefier guy.
Akeem was a
Because then
nightmare,
Robert,
man.
because then you could have Pickens and Dexter can just rotate a 3 tech with Walker. That's ideal.
That's what I want. My hope is that they had Justin Jones and they couldn't demote Justin Jones because that would have been really silly. But they also knew that there was no way they were getting both Pickens and Dexter reasonable snaps. You're hearing my headcanon, Nick. This is me trying to justify that basically you couldn't actually just bench Justin Jones or the defense was going to be too bad. So the whole plan to have Pickens play 1 technique was always just a matter of this is the only way we're going to get him on the field. Better to get him out of position, some reps, than to basically make him the 3rd 3 technique. And that guy never plays.
He never plays, yeah.
So hopefully they push him over. I'll be blunt. It would be weird to me if they don't. I will be just really perturbed if they don't, because the guy weighed into the combine at 289. These 1 techniques play at 340. They list at 335, which is their wink, wink, nudge, nudge way of saying that I'm not 350 pounds. I'm only 335.
Yeah,
Pickens is out of position. I like to think we all know it, right, Nick?
I mean, Dexter's massive, though, and that's the thing that's so weird about him being bad against the run is he's a massive, massive human being. I mean, and I know part of it is his get off, and I know part of it is him.
I thought the get off was fine.
He's high.
I thought it was all technique. He was able to. So it's funny, right, Nick? We've talked about this before, that natural gifts in your rookie season can be your undoing. Gervon Dexter is so unbelievably strong, so naturally strong, that at Florida, he was able to stack double teams while playing high. He got to the NFL, and the difference between a 21-year-old who's working on his business degree while he plays on scholarship and a 29-year-old that won't tell or that doesn't want to go home and tell his wife he got cut, they're different men. Right, Nick?
Mm-hmm.
And
you know what's crazy? Billings, so I'm looking here. Billings is 6'1", 311. This is listed, whatever, at PFF. Dexter's 6'6", 312. So again, it's easy for him to play high. And they have Pickens at 6'4", 300. I thought Billings was heavier than that.
There's no way he's not, right? I mean, you saw him carrying the weight, and I love it because otherwise, he plays with so much strength. I swear he looks 400 pounds when he's stacking some of these double teams. And hey, to Dexter's credit, man, his ability to gain a step on people as he worked around them, and even while he was naturally playing high, I know you saw this, Nick, he would win with raw strength, no pass rush move. As he started to develop pass rush moves, he started to win more. But you saw some cross chops that looked like he was trying to mimic Yannick Ngakoue, that it is fun watching this kid learn. I don't hate Gervon Dexter. The Bears just so badly need him to be the guy for this line to work that it is an obvious point of risk. Does that make sense?
No, it does. So let's transition though. So D-end, I would argue, is the biggest hole in the team right now.
I mean, clearly. That's the obvious one.
I mean, Walker was, again, we referenced PFF, 84th best edge / D-end out of 112. And I mean, again, that's not even startable. And beyond him, Ngakoue was one of the worst DNs in the NFL, and even worse, that was Dom Rob.
Oh my gosh.
You go on Rasheem Green, like it was just all bad. And so now you got Jacob Martin, who people are talking about a little bit during OTAs, but he played 192 snaps last year. You got Austin Booker, who fell to the 5th round or 4th round.
Hey, Austin Booker has been getting all the positive buzz in OTAs. Look,
But what round was he? Was he 4th or 5th?
fifth.
5th.
I can't speak to who said it just because I'm not trying to big up anybody. Look, yeah, I DM every once in a while with a couple guys on the beat, and what they were telling me, Nick, was Booker looks the part. They were saying Booker looks particularly fast and quick around the edge. So not to get you too excited, but as my hope, just so we're both on the same page, Nick, I expect Booker to get graded in the run in his rookie season. But if he does have sort of a Bryce Huff-esque role as a designated pass rusher,
Perfect.
I actually wonder if he would bring a lot of value to an edge room where he and DeMarcus Walker can do the Dragon Ball Z fusion and become a useful edge between the two of them. First and second down, Walker's your elephant end that's going to battle the run game. Third down, here comes Booker. Zoom, he's around the corner. I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but it's funny because to me at least, Nick, I see that edge room with no upgrade at all, and we almost know one's coming, right? Is it Calais Campbell? Is it Yannick Ngakoue? I don't know. Maybe it's Emmanuel Ogba. Maybe it's Carl Lawson. It could be a lot of people, but
Could be a trade.
that feels to me like it's going to be a much easier room to patch into serviceability as opposed to what happens if anything goes wrong in D tackle, because
Yeah, no.
we're not
Well,
certain we have two starters at D tackle, or
well,
at least,
hold on. You've said this, man. Sorry. What if Montez Sweat gets hurt?
oh yeah,
We
we're
have no
host.
pass rush.
But to quote the immaculate words of people on Twitter, the moment you start saying, "Yeah, what if best defensive player gets hurt?" is a moment where you're wishing the absolute worst
Oh
on
yeah.
a defense. So there's an element with Montez Sweat where it's like the Browns don't really have a great backup for Myles Garrett either. So there's you give and take, right?
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, to me, like I still feel like they're one D end and one D tackle short of of
Super
of
Bowl
game day
contention.
roster. Like no, just like having a guy. It doesn't have to be like a starter. Just like having another body, because you can't go into the season with Booker and Robinson as your backup DNs. I think you need another one. I mean, maybe it's Martin. I don't know. Maybe he steps up, but you have to have someone that has experience. And then you still need someone else to take snaps. I mean, Justin Jones got snaps last year. So if Dexter takes that, who takes Dexter snaps, or Pickens snaps?
So I generally agree with you, but I also think personally, Nick, that this is where a lot of people can end up can kind of fall into a trap where we say, I agree with you in principle that they are an edge, especially a good one, and a good defensive tackle away from being a game day roster. But by that same definition, the Lions don't have startable corners because I don't want to hear it about how Terrion Arnold was a first round pick and therefore he is automatically a startable corner. We know. Like, do I need to talk about CJ Henderson? Do I need to talk about Derek Stingley? Do I need to talk about better corners that were taken? That's not a hater moment to Terrion. If he's gonna figure it out, it's gonna be later, right?
Mhm.
First half of the season, Tyreek Stevenson. All rookie season, Kyler Gordon. It takes a minute. But the Lions are just going to sashay into opening day roster with that as their corner one and their corner two. Yeah, that was all Terrion Arnold. None of that was Ennis Rakestraw, who might take even longer to fully
Yep.
click in. I do think it's worth forgetting, Nick, that even the good teams in the NFL, just not the great ones, generally walk into their season with 1 to 2 very brazen holes on their
Yeah.
team. It's not normally defensive line, which is a high impact position. So when the Packers walk onto the field with 0 starting safeties, they can get away with it a little bit easier than the Bears, who are missing some beef up front.
Yeah.
But I
The
also
the further you get away from the ball, the easier it is.
I
I mean,
also think
that's what it is.
I just think it's easy to declare that the sky is falling because the roster isn't fully complete, but complete rosters compete for championships. And
Yeah.
the Bears are looking for a playoff spot in a tough division, but it does make me wonder how off are they really going to look up front, especially if this will go into another concern I have. is Flus going to blitz or not? Because
Ah,
when they were blitzing, I actually think it masked defensive pressure issues very well. It
mhm.
supported Montez Sweat in a big way, used the fact that the Bears' defensive line threats are pretty obvious, right, Nick? So if
Yeah.
they're going to double Montez Sweat, then that takes the running back away. And if you blitz and you actually get past the lineman, there's no running back. And now TJ Edwards or Kyler Gordon is free on the quarterback, and that's exactly what you want as a defense. But if we're just going to play 4 down, drop 7,
Not
we
good.
might
I
need
mean,
we might need a move.
well, and Brisker's good at blitzing. Kyler Gordon's good at blitzing. Like, you got some DBs that are decent at it too.
Speaking of, what do you think about Brisker? Quick tangent. Thoughts on Brisker?
Oh, he's on my list here too. Okay, we'll get into that one too. I have Jaquan Brisker, stay healthy, and then I have will Brisker and Kyler Gordon take a step. So to me, I mean, that's all in one.
I think Brisker's so funny because if you talk to me about what I value in safety play, and we've talked about this before, Nick, I care about how you play in the deep part of the field. If you're good in
Yes.
the deep third, then I just about don't care what you do at the line of scrimmage. And Brisker is not good at the deep third. Brisker has actually pretty poor eyes overall. I mean, he doesn't track plays well. He gets fooled on misdirection consistently. And I'm not just talking about play action because sometimes that feels like a cheap shot. I'm talking about like actual reverse plays. He will pursue the guy who started with the ball an extra step and a half beyond anybody else. But here's the thing, Nick. He's 210. He hits like he's 235. He pass rushes better
Yeah.
than some edge rushers.
Well, you know who he
He
reminds me of?
Landon Collins is the name that comes to my mind,
I was gonna say Jamal Adams.
which is funny because one of them was picked at 5, the other
Yeah.
one was picked at 49. I think Jamal may have been higher than that. I don't know.
Yeah, no, yeah, he was high. I mean, well, and then traded for 2 first-round picks, which was a terrible trade, by the way. But like,
You could
I'm with you.
argue,
His PFF grade, Robert, rushing is
yeah.
81.8.
I
That's the
mean,
best thing he has. His coverage is 62.
it's funny because Brisker in coverage is used as the guy who's going to cover the flat in cover 3 sky a lot. Or
Mhm.
in man coverage,
As
they'll
he
play
should.
him up near the line and they'll have him stack the tight end as best he can. Or occasionally, Nick, they'll throw you a crazy one and they'll start in cover 2. They'll flip into cover 3 buzz or lurk, which is going to have Brisker sit over the middle of the field. And the quarterback
Robert.
just never expects him to be there. And Brisker might have had 3 interceptions last season had he caught those balls
Yeah.
because they really did hit him right in the hands. So I don't want to make it sound like Brisker has no use. He's just, if you talk to a lot of like high flying DB guys that want to see DBs cover, Brisker's on a lot of our negative lists because Nick, guys like you and me are blind and ignore very often all those other little things that Brisker does, like being a force player in the run game, like the fact that, I mean, Nick, I can't name a running back that's fallen forward against him. Can you? Brisker just sticks
No.
these guys.
Well, he doesn't care about his body either. He gets hurt. That's part of the issue.
That's
But
that's
like,
that's true.
but both of them are second round picks. And this is a huge year because we've been through 2 years already, Robert. And I'm not confident that either one of them is a staple in this defense. Because if they have the same year that they had last year in 2024, I'd be like, I mean, replacing a nickel corner, okay, not a big deal. I think you replace Jaquan Brisker. So to me, I think this is a huge year for both of them. One, they both have to stay healthy. They both have gotten injured. And two, they both have to take a step. If they don't take a step, they could get replaced.
I will tell you that to me, it's funny because when we talk about mountain and molehill, Brisker and Gordon, in my opinion, have been made a molehill because of hitting on some of the other picks. Tyreek Stevenson has not landed all the way there. I don't want to take a victory lap before we've gotten there, right, Nick? But
You
Jalen
want to.
Johnson is fitting this defense like a glove. Tyreek Stevenson looks like he can play outside. And moreover, we kind of know Kyler can't. For those who don't remember, in Kyler's rookie year, he got some brief run as an outside corner. It was very clear to me that the Bears drafted Kyler Gordon as high as they did, thinking that he could imitate Kenny Moore, who in Indianapolis with Matt Eberflus played inside. He played nickel on downs where they were in nickel formation. And then when they did get into base, where you take the nickel corner off the field, Moore would kick outside. This is extremely hard. Massive credit to Kenny Moore. That is an extremely difficult thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
When Kyler Gordon played outside, he wasn't physical enough or fast enough to hang with outside receivers that simply ran down the field. And it took a couple weeks. The Bills did not try him. The Eagles did not try him, but the Lions did. And they had 3 plays that could have been touchdowns, and the Lions only converted on one of them. But you could tell that that was the last moment the Bears were going to get caught with Kyler Gordon on the outside if they could avoid it. So to your point, Nick, on one hand, we look at these guys and we say, okay, they're second round picks. Are we getting enough value out of second round picks? I don't know. Probably not. At least if we're going to consider an altruistic, idealistic value prop. But are they good players on this team? Yeah. Okay. They're delivering in their role. A box safety that can play well in the box, and a nickel corner that's one of the only corners that was able to deny Jaden Reed whatever he wanted to do on the interior. There's value here. If they're down to take medium-sized extensions, we can even talk about what their future looks like. But I would love to see them just outright prove it, to your point.
Yes.
If they stay where they are, they might not be back with the team. And that happens sometimes. Hey. Yeah?
I have something fascinating here. I did not know this, okay? Of Brisker, I mean, we know Kevin Byard's old. Of Brisker, Gordon, Jalen Johnson, Tyreek Stevenson, and Terrell Smith, who's the youngest?
Is it Smith? Smith's really young, right? Or is it Gordon?
It is Tyreek Stevenson is 24. Okay.
Okay.
I'll go by age on up. Okay. So Stevenson is 24 flat. Gordon is almost 24 and a half. Then
I'm glad that our most recent pick is the youngest. I thought you were going to gotcha me.
Well, this is where I'm getting it a little bit. Then Terrell Smith is 24 and about 3/4. Jaquan Brisker is 25 and like a month or two. Which is exactly what Jalen Johnson is. Jalen Johnson's super young. So like he's the same age as Jaquan Brisker, y'all. So if you want to like talk about development, hold on real quick. If you want to talk about like the development of two players, Jalen Johnson got paid, and we know he's elite, or he's at least done it for 1 year. Jaquan Brisker is still a mystery.
The other thing I want to throw at you, because it's really easy to get stuck on the guys with names, and I'm going to be very blunt with you, Nick. Why did I not learn the defensive tackles? Because UDFA defensive tackles that matter are so rare. It might be more likely that you're going to get struck by lightning at some point in your life. But there are 2 DBs I think we should mention, and that's Greg Stroman, who has looked like a very solid nickelback, and Jalen Jones is worth mentioning here. And as a UDFA, you expect nothing from a guy like Jalen Jones, but he had an okay season last year or 2 years ago as an outside corner. Very okay, given that he was a UDFA rookie. Dude, last year in limited action, he stuck some guys. I think if you pull up his PFF profile, he ended up grading out really well because he would come on as their dime backer in man coverage scenarios, jam guys at the line of scrimmage. Very few players beat him clean, which massive kudos to him. I remember in particular, he made some huge plays in that Carolina Panthers game that the Bears had at home on Thursday night and was a primary reason that they were able to keep Bryce Young closed up.
I know you asked me to pull it up, and this is going to hurt, okay? I know that Terrell Smith had a better PFF grade than Tyreek Stevenson.
Jalen Jones was also better, wasn't he?
Yes, he was better by a little bit. So yeah, I mean that's good. I think that and again, we talked about this last episode. Jonathan Owens, Quindell Johnson.
I like Owens, man. I actually really like Owens.
Athlete, man. Athlete. So like you got a lot of depth actually and a lot of youth in the back end, but we desperately need the front end to not look so bad that the back end can't thrive.
It's exactly. I love a lot of the pieces on this defense, especially when we talk individually, but defense is a unit. It's part of where, Nick, when you and anybody else in this podcast hears me mention the Jonathan Allen trade and heard me talk about the Chris Jones signing for a little while, it's nothing against Jervon. It's that this back seven feels to me like a unique opportunity to have a defense that isn't just good, it's really good. And I want the front seven to live up to that because if you add Calais Campbell and Jonathan Allen, if you can get, I'm serious, if you can get Calais Campbell for like $4.5 to $5 million, and
Yes.
you get Jonathan Allen on some salary retention, your defensive line might give you defensive shot at the top 5. As of right now, they'll be closer to average than they are top 5, but they should be squaring up for that like bottom of the top 10,
Yeah.
really high top, or like really 11th, 12th, 13th
Mm.
spot.
And the good news is
Even if
the
nothing
back end, even linebacker, you could survive an injury or two. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the front end, you can't do that. All right, so I'm going to move on. I have this one's a short one. This is a concern last year, Robert, that we had.
Mm-hmm.
The Bears solved the problem. Good. I mean, there was one issue, but mainly got solved. That person's gone. Who is going to return punts for Chicago? Right now, I see Velus Jones. We have the always in Chicago Dante Pettis and Tyler Scott. Now, I know they said what Roma Dunze caught punts or something. I don't want that to happen. So, who is catching punts in Chicago, Robert? And I see that as a concern.
I also hope it's not Roma Dunze. I also hope it's not Dante Pettis. But at the end of the day, even if it is, I don't know. I wish that they could just teach Scott to do it. Was Scott awful as a punt returner? I really can't remember.
I don't know.
I'm not trying to be weird. It's more like Ryan Poles at one point described kick returns and punt returns as, I want to be able to get up and use the bathroom at that point in the game. And he wasn't wrong, is the sad part. It matters. I mean, you come from a high school coaching background. Yeah. I think that's a perfect descriptor of, in high school, special teams really will win and lose games. And they'll win and lose NFL games, just less of them. But as long as the punter can catch, I guess I don't care. And I'd prefer that it wasn't a Dunze, because that just feels like knee injuries on punt returns don't happen that often. In Chicago, we had a very obvious one happen with Tariq Cohen, who his career ended on a punt return. So scars, right, Nick?
I mean, Tyler Scott had 13 special team snaps as a returner.
Did he muff one?
I don't know. See, I don't have all that. That's all I got for you.
Part of me wonders if it's Velus' job to lose, but I really think the Bears are just trying their best to basically give Velus some kind of job on the roster. And I don't really want to see him returning punts. You know me, Nick. I am a rare Velus enjoyer, but not as a punt returner.
I think I'm okay giving him another chance.
Don't do it, Nick.
I am.
He muffed 2 more in last year's preseason. Don't do that.
It happens.
Don't do that.
He's not perfect.
You could say that all you want to, Nick, but I will tell you right now, as a Velus enjoyer, if Velus goes back there to catch a punt in the 3rd or 4th quarter of a tight game against the Titans and muffs one, and they go down on account of it, it is unforgivable. Not fireable, but unforgivable. Does that make sense?
No, it does. Hold on. I'm looking something up because I have an example of this. Now I have it. Oh my gosh. Okay, this is before your time, Robert. Okay, so I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the other Bears fans that maybe a little older. 2001, you could argue into 2002. The Bears want to go conservative on their kick returner. And so they went with a running back, a bigger running back. His name was Leon Johnson. And you know what? The reasoning was he's not going to fumble. He's going to be steady Eddie, whatever. Okay. I was at the game at Memorial Stadium, where that's where they played when they were restoring Soldier Field, and where he fumbled. And I think it led to a comeback. I think it was the Saints, and they came back and won. So going conservative doesn't always help either, Robert. Last year, Trent Taylor muffed the punt and lost it. And I think it cost him a game. Was that the Cleveland game?
I hear you. I just don't see Scott as more conservative. Like the moment that you start saying Tyler Scott, Dante Pettis, etc. is more conservative, you're basically saying that you want an element of danger in your punt returner. And I mean like of dropping the ball. Like,
Dangerous.
because Scott's got every ability to run quickly with the football, and we've seen it actually translate in games. I like Valus. I know he's dangerous with the ball in his hand,
Mhm.
but he's so poor at tracking it through the air that if he's not darn near perfect in camp, I hope they don't entertain it. And the good news is, I really would doubt they would, because it's the same special teams coaches that have been working with them for 3 years. Nick, if the freshman comes in and he's making mistakes, you'll give him some chances sophomore year. And if you see the same mistakes sophomore year, then well, that's too bad. You're gonna pull the plug a little earlier. Junior year, you might give him a look in the early days of camp, but the first couple times you see that mistake repeat itself, I bet that
Here,
plug is quick to pull.
I get it. Okay, let me keep going with this. Okay, I'm gonna keep pressing you. Okay,
Oh boy,
Trent Taylor had 2 fumbles last year. Tyler Scott had a fumble and lost it. Remember that one?
yes,
Okay, DJ had a fumble. Cole Kmet had a fumble. Bajan had some. Fields obviously had some. Herbert had one. Foreman had one. Rashawn Johnson had one. Chase Claypool didn't have any. Okay, I'm just joking. Okay.
congrats, Chase.
Darnell Mooney did not have a fumble, shockingly, for all of the bad things he did last year. And you know what? Valus Jones did not have a fumble last year,
They
Robert.
didn't give him the chance to fumble,
But
and
he didn't do it.
and in that role, so I cannot believe that I'm about to do my Valus thing, but if you give Valus I hate the Debo comparison, but like what people think the Debo role is, right? The Debo role isn't real. The Debo role that people keep talking about during draft season has never been something that Debo has done. He had 2 seasons where he lined up as a running back near ad nauseum, and people forget that he still caught like 100 passes that year.
Yeah.
You know
Well,
what
they
I
didn't have
mean?
Christian McCaffrey.
What?
So they didn't have Christian McCaffrey. So, like, hey, can you go back there? You're better than what we have.
Right. And then they paid him like crazy, and now he doesn't do it anymore.
No.
And there's already problems there. Anyways, getting
Right.
back to it.
Right.
When you line Valus up and give him the ball, the guy's kind of a first down machine. I mean, he converted a touchdown out of thin air in week 18 against the Vikings in a game that nobody cares about. And
No.
I'm not saying you should care about it. I'm saying Valus Jones, when he is toting the rock, is a lot of fun. But you can't pass it to him.
I brought this up as a concern. So I'm with you. It's a concern. Okay. Who's the punt returner? Do you want to go into your next one or you want me to go?
You know, I've hit the major ones. If I was going to bring up another falsetto, like another not really worry, a lot of people talk about the fact that they have a rookie quarterback. And I'm not about to sit here and blow sunshine that I think Caleb is, I don't know. I think Caleb's been preparing for this for forever. Caleb seems like a very intellectually smart person, maybe arrogant. You might not like him, but Caleb is certainly a more thoughtful football player than a lot of the football players that you and I have covered across positions. And frankly, I think he's in the upper echelon of thinkers at the quarterback position. Does that mean he's going to be like an ultra processor? Nick, you and I don't know, but I do think that there's an element of rookieism that you can't avoid. There's an element of this season that is going to come down to how well is Caleb Williams playing. I believe that between the schedule and the talent that they should have for the first couple weeks at minimum before a couple injuries hit, they have ways to win that aren't on the back of Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
And that gives him time to get his legs under him, which we would hope only takes about 6 weeks. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. No, I'm with you there. Well, if we're going to Caleb, one of mine is his fumbles. He's got to tighten
yeah.
that down. He
Oh,
can't
yeah.
be so loose with how he carries the ball when he maneuvers. It's so much fun with how he maneuvers in the pocket, but he cannot lose the football as much as
Okay.
he did in college.
Okay. I want to push back on that a little bit. Let's pretend, Nick, that the fumbles are irrevocable, that they are simply going to happen. How many explosives do you need to see created per dropped ball?
12?
I'll give you time to think about it. What'd you say?
12? 12?
12 per dropped football?
Yep.
Hey, we'll revisit that at the end of the year. Because
Okay.
I'm generally with you. You have to reel it back. You can't drop the ball 25 times in a 17-game season and expect good things to happen. But also, Nick, you do get a lot of them back. Like you get roughly 30 to 50% of the balls that hit the turf back. So less odds than an interception. Sometimes at least it feels that way. And if the same habit that's leading to these strip sacks is creating explosives, you might decide it's worth it.
Right.
But Caleb needs to make it worth it.
Like to me though, like let's say he doesn't fumble, okay? Or it's like 1 or 2 a year, which is very small. And he doesn't do his pocket stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like 1,
He's
2,
the
3 is
ultimate
out.
safe man.
Yeah, he becomes like Jared Goff.
He becomes like Tyson Bagent.
He wouldn't be worth it in terms of the first pick. I know it sounds bad. Like he can do it from 1, 2, 3 and on time. But that what he does in the pocket, that's his Superman stuff, man. Like that's what makes him elite as a prospect. The how he can, I don't know, the way to describe it, like how he can sense pressure and be just enough away that you can't sack him, but he's not running crazy where he's not in a throwing position. It's unbelievable.
I will tell you, there's one group when it comes to Caleb that I am counting on more than I'd like to admit, Nick. Would you like to guess who it is? It's more obvious than meets the eye.
Receivers?
It is the Bears defense. One of the things that I've been thinking about is it couldn't have helped, as much as I understand that the Justin Fields conversation is pretty much dead and buried, as it probably should be. It can't have helped Justin Fields develop a sense for NFL timing that he was going up against a defense that was starting Kyler Gordon, who was not playing good ball yet, and a smattering of poor defensive linemen, linebackers that were not very good, et cetera, in 2022. I mean, when you do all your OTAs and you do all of your training camp reps against a defense that is not particularly great, what do you really learn, Nick? Like, when your receivers are only so good, what do you really learn? With the Bears defense right now, the expectation and the hope would be that Caleb Williams is about to spend 10 to 12 weeks practicing against a defense that is better than the Titans, that is better than the Texans, that is
That's
better than the Rams, that is better than a lot of their schedule. And if he can practice against a Jalen Johnson, against a Tremaine Edmunds, against a Tyreek Stevenson that are giving him hell, good, because it'll be easier when he's not playing them. So I'm counting on this Bears defense to accelerate him, like we've heard about Sean McVay in the Play Caller series. There's no way, and if we do get this, Nick, it will be incredible. There's no way that Caleb Williams truly hits the ground fully running. There's going to be growing pains. But if we can keep that growing pain in the second quarter so that we play clean in the fourth when the chips are down, that's fine. We'll take it.
No, I'm within. I also think that those battles, like with the receivers, helping the young corners and safeties will help too. So I have 3 that I've grouped together. We can go through this quickly. I think we're kind of near the end here. Three are health wise. We have to spend a lot of time on it, but Tevin Jenkins, got to stay healthy. Like, if he wants to get paid, he's got to stay healthy. Darnell Wright, that shoulder. I mean, if that goes bad, then you got to go down to Karan Amagaji, Matt Pryor. Well, that would be a hurt. Jalen Johnson's shoulder. That's been a thing, y'all.
Yep.
So those are 3 there. My other one is Braxton Jones. Braxton Jones. We did not go left tackle. We went wide receiver, Robert. We didn't protect the quarterback. We decided to give him a weapon. Braxton Jones had a promising rookie year, especially for a 5th round pick. Last year, I think he regressed a little bit. And so, and I know he was injured a little bit too, but year 3 is big for Braxton Jones, just like Jaquan Brisker, just like Kyler Gordon.
Nick, am I allowed to pull the Band-Aid off and spit a little bit of truth at the risk of saying something that's painful to hear?
At least it's not a tinfoil hat. This is a Band-Aid, ripping it off.
Braxton Jones regressed last year, no doubt. He also played with a quarterback that did not move off his spot unless he was running. Like in Madden terms, for all you Madden players out there, Justin Fields didn't move until it was time to hold right trigger. And at that point, we were getting all the way out of the pocket if we made it at all. Braxton gives up a soft edge. There's no two bones about it. I mean, especially when he's going up against rushers that hit him with a little more power. Now, when just like we talked about with Charles Leno for forever, when he goes up against a lighter defensive end or a defensive end that is not very good because the Raiders' defensive end on the left-hand side isn't good and Max Crosby is going to be the one who goes up against Darnell Wright the entire day, then Braxton's going to be fine. More than fine. But my big question, Nick, is yeah, of course I want Braxton to be better. I think that part's obvious. But also, that softer edge we're talking about, can Caleb Williams turn that into stepping up and getting out? Because if he can step up and escape the pocket from there,
Right.
Braxton's soft edge becomes outright not a problem. And then at that point, if Braxton can simply make defensive ends choose, do you want to roll back and attack the inside where Caleb starts to do that wild backpedal that we've seen from him?
Yep.
Or try to go all the way around the edge where Caleb then drives forward in the pocket and then leaks out to the left? If Braxton can force a choice instead of just giving it up outright, he has plenty
getting bull
of value.
rushed.
Right. He'll have plenty of value. But even the bull rush, if he can get bull rushed like it's 80% bull rush and 20% turn the guy's shoulders, there's something there. And that's where I want to see how Braxton blends with pocket movement. It'll be the pocket movement of a rookie. There are going to be snaps in every game. I wouldn't be surprised, Nick, for the first probably, what do you think, 12 weeks, where Caleb tries to do something, but looks like he has no idea what he's doing because he just doesn't have that feel that's translated yet. But Braxton is somebody that I think has the most to gain from Caleb's play style or his differences between him and Justin Fields. And I'm very interested to see how this marriage works out.
Well, but also, like, is this your franchise left tackle or not? I think it's this year. This is the year that proves it. Because if he doesn't do it this year, then you might draft the replacement for him in round 1, or you have 2 round 2 picks, or you sign somebody. Because you talked about this before, Robert.
Mm-hmm.
Are you paying $18 million per year for Braxton Jones right now? Or
No.
would you? Would you sign him to that? So, like, that's where it comes down to. So this is a big year for him. And honestly, it's a good problem to have because he is promising. Brisker is promising. Gordon is promising. Like, we have good problems, y'all. I'm not like saying this is all negative, but to be that left tackle, which is so crucial, he's got to prove a little more than he did last year.
It's really tough. The Bears are in a Braxton Jones quandary, and they're not going to find their answer this year because even if Braxton is worth paying, guys like you and I are still going to have our doubts, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also, Nick, I want a defensive lineman next year. I mean, if Braxton Jones does play pretty well, I can almost guarantee you could play this clip of what I'm saying right now, and I would still look at you and say, yeah, I know. But I think I'd rather have Braxton and a new defensive lineman than our current defensive line and a new left tackle, which is sort of the it's the thing we got to figure out.
Charles Leno all over again, Robert.
I know it really is. Which,
so you want me to go my last one, or you have another one?
Tevin, can we stay healthy? You talked about it earlier. But I would love to see Tevin be the leader that this line needs. Him and Darnell Wright. Actually, Darnell Wright got hurt a couple times. Now, he's a rookie, and he's also a little reckless with his body. So I'm not surprised that playing almost 40 pounds lighter than he played at Tennessee just meant that there was an adjustment period, right? Let's suffice it to say, Nick, Darnell Wright's body went through hell between the months of probably last September. Nope, before then, like 2 Septembers ago. So when he started his season at Tennessee, then all the way through draft, where he probably played at 340, 350. Then he had to slim down to like 310. Then he had to bulk back up to 325. And if you told me that his muscles were creaking and screaming, I just wouldn't be surprised because physiologically speaking, that's a lot on a human body.
I thought he was heavier than 340 at Tennessee. I thought he was like 350.
Some people speculated all kinds of different numbers. We're never going to know. They never listed him as more than 330.
So here's my last one. And again, there's a few others. I didn't talk about the running backs at all and how that's going to work out. That's another teaser. But Shane Waldron.
Oh, this is a good one.
New offensive staff. There's some rumblings from Seattle. They're glad that he's gone. He didn't utilize Jackson Smith-Njigba right. You know, people aren't happy. He ran too much, didn't set people up for success. 12th best EPA per play over the last 3 years with Russ, who we've seen now is cooked, y'all. And Gino resurrected the career, but was it Dave Canales? Was it him? Like, there's a lot of things out there. Shane Waldron has a lot to prove. And him being new, how will he work in Chicago with all new players and all new parts coming together? I think Shane Waldron is a big, big question mark. I have a quiet confidence that about him. I know he's better than Luke Getsy, y'all. I'm not trying to say that, but just like, is he going to be good or is he going to be average?
Well, you have a quiet confidence. Normally, I'm the naysayer. Let me have a loud confidence. The fact that the Seahawks were top 12 with that offensive line is a feat. I
You
mean,
bet.
those guys couldn't play, which sounds like a hyperbole again, but go back to almost any third down. And if Geno Smith had more than 3 seconds from snap to throw, it was unusual. And that mathematically sounds about right. That should pass your smell test. But Nick, you shouldn't average 3 seconds because you should have at least a couple where you got everybody and you
Yeah.
hang on to it for like 4 to 4.5. They didn't get that. As a run blocking unit, they were fine. I mean, a lot of that is because the Seahawks would run a lot of wide zone and some inside zone with like outside zone tracks, et cetera, where they were trying to run wide, get everybody moving. When you get everybody moving, you neutralize some of the talent. Vita Vea, for instance, on the move is going to eat you a lot less than Vita Vea straight down the pipe.
Yeah.
But I personally think that, yeah, Waldron has his moments, but I will tell you, Nick, that in my own experience, there is a Venn diagram you can draw. You draw one Venn diagram around fans that complain about play calling, and then you draw another diagram around fans that misunderstand the talent on their roster, and that is a circle. They overlap
Yeah.
1-to-1. And Seahawks fans understanding that they had sick receivers, but not understanding just how big of a problem their offensive line was. Football's not baseball. You can't see pitching problems while also scoring enough runs that tell you you should have
Yeah.
won the game. Like, they all blend together. And
So
yeah,
So the other part of this the positive I think is the wide receivers coach I like because he's been with Keenan Allen before, which I think also goes into will he come back because he knows the guy, is Thomas Brown. So
I
Thomas
love
Brown
it.
is a part of this cancerous staff in Carolina, right? Was the hot shot OC. Now he's coming to be, I don't know what his role is for sure in Chicago. I like that we have him,
I mean,
but I don't know if he was part of the problem or not.
Nick, am
Now,
I allowed to hit? Okay, here's my hot take. I like to think we both know what Thomas Brown is. Don't you?
you know what? Again, I always reference this back. This is kind of fun. I coached against Thomas Brown. Do you know this?
Yeah, you told me
He
about
was he
this.
was at Georgia when I was long time ago, y'all. But anyways, I like to think it wasn't him. That's what I think.
So, look, I'm by no means about to tell you that I know anything. This is a very June take. Okay, Nick? Thomas Brown took this job because he sees him as the offensive coordinator in waiting. Like Thomas Brown,
Ooh.
because every offensive staff is going to believe the absolute best. They think that Shane Waldron's going to get head coaching interviews. Bobby Slowick, with no experience at all, got head coaching interviews. They think Shane Waldron's going to get head coaching interviews. And when he moves on, Thomas Brown wants to be first in line for an internal promotion. And you know what? Kudos to the Bears for thinking about this
That's a
because
good take, Robert.
that's very qualified, if you ask me. I mean, if you told me, Nick, that the worst case scenario of the Bears being good is that they lose the offensive mind that got them there, I would then point to Thomas Brown and say, I'm not telling you that they're definitely covered, but I'm telling you they got a much better chance at it than most
Yep.
of these staffs that
Yep.
immediately promote Kerry Joseph to offensive coordinator.
Right.
It is not lost on me that Brown took the job here because he had options, right?
Right.
He took the most. What does a backup quarterback do? They take the opportunity that's most likely going to get them to start. What did Thomas Brown do? He took the opportunity that's most likely to get him a job as an offensive
Mhm.
coordinator. And I don't know. That's just how I see it, Nick.
Um, I heard some like bad rumors out of Carolina. I heard that the person that called the plays didn't talk to the quarterback on any other day besides Sunday.
That sucks.
And then also look at the offensive line, right? The offensive line was okay in Carolina until last year when Frank Wright and them came. And then when Frank Wright left Indy, the O-line got better again. Like, it's been a very interesting type of thing. So I don't know who's to blame, but it's a concern, Waldron, the new staff, how it all blends together because it's new in Chicago. Hopeful, but it's a concern I have.
Look, my favorite thing. Okay, so I have this vision of Nick. If you went to go call plays for Josh Allen and you called a bad play, I think Josh would object to it. I'm not saying Josh would be right, but Josh Allen had a very specific way of doing things that worked for him, that was established by Brian Daboll, and is likely now continued in many ways by both of the offensive coordinators he had last year. And I imagine that because Josh has been successful, Josh can now articulate what works and why. And I say that because the good news here is that the Bears are hoping that they build something with Shane Waldron that Caleb can articulate to anybody else. Where if it is Thomas Brown and Thomas says, hey, let's do this, Caleb may actually be able to say, I don't know about that at different points. Whereas Bryce Young doesn't get a choice. He's a rookie.
Right.
He's going to go with what his coach said works.
Yeah.
So there's a small buffer here, I hope, where you build up a little bit of veterancy in Caleb. And when you build up some veterancy, then he grows in confidence. He can tell the offensive coordinator that we don't know so much about what works and what doesn't. But that's asking a lot out of quarterback. No quarterback's going to get everything perfect. But
no, but again, like surrounding him with the receivers, getting Gerald Everett in there. Waldron's experienced as an OC. Like you put a lot of experience around.
yes,
Even Brown, right? Maybe Brown needs some more experience here in terms of development. Same thing with Caleb. I think like they're putting in a lot of insulation, so that if there is an issue with the furnace, it's still gonna survive.
right. I have
You know what
one
I mean?
more worry, Nick. One
Cool.
more. It's my last one.
Okay, I'm out. So
How much does Caleb Williams love football? I am a Caleb Williams believer. I think he loves it a lot, right? But the way that I would put this is, Nick, of the, let's say, 80 quarterbacks that play NFL football, 80 of them love football, or at least 80 of them in a job interview setting would tell you they love football. And then one of them, if you got them to describe how much do they love football, they would describe somebody that does not actually love football that much. Does that make sense? Like, okay, let me put this in a better way.
Is this like a Kyler Murray Call of Duty type thing?
Kind of. Like they'd say
Right.
that they study the playbook an extra 3 hours a day. And then you talk to a different quarterback that if he's not in the playbook, it's weird. He must be eating or sleeping or something else, right? Like, I'm going to use an example. Everybody gave Justin Fields a lot of credit because when things were going poorly in 2022, I believe it was, he said, I'm just going to wake up an extra hour earlier to do a little bit more studying. And on one hand, that is admirable. That's hard. Don't hear me taking anything away from it. It's just that these quarterbacks are football psychopaths. I mean, listen to the way CJ Stroud's been talking in any podcast people put him on. This guy lives and breathes football. And there's nothing wrong with Caleb Williams having hobbies. I think it takes guts that show a work ethic to even suggest on your lock screen that you're going to win 8 Super Bowls. Are you kidding? Most people dream of a playoff game. Most people dream of 1 Super Bowl. To dream that you're going to top Brady, there's a work ethic that's required there. I just can't say we know until we know. Does that make sense, Nick?
I just, nothing for me. Again, we're Bears fans, right? But I also like to think like we've been watching and absorbing as much Caleb content in the past 6 months, Robert,
Pretty much.
than, I don't know, than I ever had before.
That is healthy.
Any prospect. Like of
Way
any
more
like
than is
single
healthy.
prospect, I've watched more Caleb or listened or studied. I like him more and more the more I know. The less, like, one of the things we didn't even talk about was Caleb's dad. You know why? Because it's not even a concern anymore based off everything that we've learned. But
Marvin
from him
Harrison
having
is the player that we keep getting told Caleb Williams is. That's not
right,
me
like
being a hater. That's
yeah,
me
that's
saying like
we've
dad
read.
is more involved than maybe he should be. Already in trouble with fanatics about
Right,
his representation.
yeah.
Just saying.
But like, but having his own apartment as a high school kid so he can play at a certain team and like living on his own, but like being responsible, right? And not obviously making it work. I mean, switching schools mid college and but then being successful and winning the Heisman the next year.
Deliberately playing on a bad team that he knew was bad and winning the
Hmm.
Heisman anyways.
Yep.
That says something.
I mean, he's already throwing with you know Keenan and Rome before he was even a Bear. Like all these things to me, but we don't know. To
We
me, it gives
don't
me the idea that it's not, but it could be. Who knows, man? Who
I
knows?
mean, look, Nick, all I'm saying, because somebody in the comments is gonna kill me for bringing this up because we weren't allowed to talk about it at the time, right, Nick? We weren't allowed to talk about it. I'm going to throw it out there that Clay Harbor at one point, as a former NFL player, thought it was weird to see Justin Fields out at a club on a Friday night before a Sunday night game. I don't know the NFL culture. I don't know anything. I am using another man's words just so that we're all on the same page. But Harbor thought it was strange. And if an NFL player tells me that that's not normal, especially
Right.
for quarterbacks, I'm inclined to believe him. And that doesn't mean that Fields made a habit of it. I don't know anything, everybody, just so we're all on the same page. It's more to say, Nick, that I imagine, heavy emphasis on the word imagine, that there are some guys that do some things and other guys that don't. And I have no idea whether any of it correlates with more success. But I do know that if Caleb is really that obsessive about football, then I tend to think that that's going to lead to good things as a Bear.
Yeah.
Because fourth quarter, yeah, it's about talent. Yeah, it's about knowing the game. It's also about willpower. It's also about just loving ball enough. And
Mhm.
I am more analytical than reducing this down to something so immeasurable. I actually hate that it comes to this. But to me, Nick, it's kind of like how if you ask Kyle Shanahan, how do you win in football? He's going to tell you, be more physical than the other team. These things boil down to immeasurable, obvious points like, do you want it bad enough? Do
Yeah.
you love the game enough? And when we talk about things like Caleb fumbling, when we talk about things like can Caleb adapt, I tend to think if he loves ball enough, he will see it, he will make the adjustment. And if he just wants to play his game, you'll get a much more Kyler like progression arc. And you know what? Kyler would be the best quarterback the Bears have ever
Oh,
had.
geez, yeah.
So we're
I
if
mean,
the,
and also like it kind of comes down to in basketball, it's who wants to take the last shot, and some guys don't want to take the last shot. You want your
no,
quarterback to do that type of stuff, and again, Justin was bad in the fourth quarter, man. He just was over his career. It's bad. Like I don't like that because I still love the guy.
you had
You
a
know what I mean?
Fields
But it
license plate. Your dog
right,
is
like
named Fields.
it just didn't work out well in the fourth quarter. I mean, even that's something where if Caleb wants to be that 8 kind of Super Bowl type guy, he's gotta own that fourth quarter, man.
I will tell you what makes me excited about Caleb Williams, among other things, is with Justin, we saw plain as day just how dangerous any quarterback with a rushing threat is.
Yeah.
Justin was a walking rushing threat that could also throw the ball.
Mhm.
Come at me if you really hate that take, but I think that's the most agreeable way to say this.
No, he's an elite runner. I mean, I you could debate he's better than Lamar, but I mean, they're up there.
The fact that he's in the conversation is amazing.
Right. Yep.
Justin really struggled to throw the ball overall. I mean, if we're talking full package thrower, we just didn't see it. And if we did, the Bears probably would have traded the number one overall pick.
Mhm.
But for the first three quarters, and certainly the first one, Nick, that that immediate the speed that Fields could bring to the table and what that meant for what they could do to different defenses put teams in blenders. I mean, in the most literal sense possible, Nick. They scored 3 straight touchdowns against an Arizona defense that had no plan. Then Arizona figured a plan out. They absolutely shuttered the Bears' offense. but 21 points is enough to win you NFL games, and the
Yeah.
defense took it from there.
Mm.
I don't know if you feel this way. The part about Caleb that gets me the most excited is that Caleb has enough talent to win outright as a thrower. And for the first 3 quarters, theoretically, he can be a thrower. And then, if he needs it in the fourth quarter or in key moments, just like we see the guy in Kansas City do, he can remind you he is also a runner. And when he needs it, he can just add that element back to his game and enter that same game breaking space that Justin Fields would start games in and live in until defenses pushed him out of it. And when you did push him out of it, you tended to shut him down. And that ability to be both could, emphasis on could, Nick, be exceptionally dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, exceptionally dangerous.
Yeah.
It's
And to be fair, Robert, that's what you want your quarterback to be. You want him to be more of the passer than the runner, and and then passes some. Like you'd rather the balance be more of the passer and eyes up, scrambling, right, buying time, like all that kind of stuff. Like we saw it in spurts with Justin. I can't remember who was the Denver game. Remember that I think he had 2 touchdown passes based off of like buying time, and he found Herbert for one. I know maybe another one, but like
he had the Herbert touchdown pass, and then he had the
mhm.
pass where he looked like Josh Allen, like
It was in the right flat, right?
Abdul-Jabbaring. So he did the left flat for the Herbert one, and then he had one, if memory serves, where he like ran to the pylon, and instead of actually
Yep.
jumping into the
Yep.
pylon, he just sky hooked it over a defender.
Yeah. Yeah. And but going back to the Caleb rushing thing, I'm gonna go back to before I knew who Caleb Williams was, Robert. I'm just Nick Whalen watching Saturday college football. Oh, Red River rivalry, right? We got Oklahoma, Texas. All right, let's see what this is going on. I know Spencer Rattler, second half he gets benched. Like, dude, what? Who is this kid? Right? Fourth down. I mean, they're down, y'all. They're down by touchdowns. Fourth and short. Caleb runs, makes the guy miss, cuts, and then just runs all the way for a touchdown. I was like, what just happened? It was like one of those things where it was we've all been there. There are moments in college football that you're like all football, not
Oh
just
yeah.
college football. You're like, that's not just a play. That's like that like means something. And I'll never forget it because that's still in my mind, that whole play happening. I was like, that's just different to
Oh
do
yeah.
as a true freshman against Texas, down a bunch on fourth down running, and it led to this.
We're almost 2 hours into the podcast. So at this point, Nick, I will end this conversation about mountains and molehills with a dream, right? And that is, of course, everybody's going to talk about layered throws. Everybody's going to make jokes about, I'm just excited to see Caleb hit a check down. People are going to make jokes about how nice it'll be to see Caleb hit slants.
Mm.
What if Caleb is who we want him to be? There will be a key moment of a key game, probably in December or January, where all you will see, Nick, is Caleb will drop back in the pocket. He'll step up in the pocket. He'll leak out to his right. He'll evade. The defensive end will be chasing him, right, as they both run for the edge. He'll get the edge. He'll turn up the sideline, and he will just run 20 yards into the end zone. And you'll wonder where anybody is, right? Because it's the broadcast, you can't see anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But that Mahomes is I'm trying to recall Mahomes playoff moments that you've seen before, where there was no choice but to cover all 3 of the Chicago receivers, all 4 if you add Cole Kmet. You've got like a double safety look, and they're clamping DJ Moore, they're clamping Keenan, they're clamping everybody.
They're bracketed, yeah.
And so Caleb just gets out of the pocket, gets all the way over to the sideline because the defensive end pushes him there, and then just runs until somebody bothers to pressure him, picks up a first down and more. And gosh, Nick, if you get a Caleb touchdown run that looks like that, the celebration is going to be euphoric. I mean, like him charging into the end zone and chucking the ball into the stands and going bananas. Like, I don't want to feed this into anybody's brain, Nick. Can you imagine what the NFL and its marketing department will do if Caleb Williams beats the Dallas Cowboys in the wild card round of the playoffs?
It'd be bigger than what Jordan Love is getting right now.
I mean,
I mean, that's okay. So I have one parting shot, and I'll try and make it quick. Okay.
Do it.
For anyone that doesn't think things are changing in Chicago, I know we have a new quarterback. Whatever you want to talk about respect. Okay. The lines have come out, like the betting lines for each individual game. 17 games. Chicago is favored in how many do you think, Robert?
9.
10.
Dang.
10 games Chicago is favored by Vegas.
Can I
They
just
make
say,
money, y'all.
I think we get to say we're right if that's the case. Like
And
objectively right.
yeah, the
That
over under is 8.5. I think that's them trying to be conservative. But when you favor them 10 times, now again, you're not
that's
going to win
the
all of
thing.
them, but you'll win some of them, or other teams are favored too. So
I get it. I'm right there with you, where it's like the over under has to be a relatively medium measurement because you
yep.
just don't know who's going to get hurt. But if the
Mhm.
Bears are currently favored in 10 games, that tells me that on paper, 10-7 is probably the right prediction. I mean, and you and I picked some weird ones. We tried to say they're going to upset here, they're going to lose this one,
Yes.
right? But if you come back to this idea that they're favored in 10, that just logically lends itself to a
Yep.
10-7 overall prediction.
Yep. Yep. So, and I had 11. So, but yeah, we'll see. But anyways, that's all I got. So yeah, 2 hours. Thanks y'all for staying with us. I know this is the second one back. We had a little break in there, but we'll try to keep it more regular. Try to be kind in those Twitter streets. You know, it's June.
Be kind
You
in them
know,
streets, baby.
there- we're okay. Okay, positivity and optimism is fine outside of this podcast where we had to talk negative about things.
We have to bring up the negatives. If we don't bring up the negatives, you can't bring up the positives.
Right.
We can't thank you guys enough. If you hit the end of the show and you haven't already, go ahead and give us a like on YouTube or a 5-star review on Spotify and or Apple Podcasts. We appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for putting up with the longer break. We'll get back to it in at least a weekly cadence. And until next time, folks, get some rest, enjoy your time, and bear down. Thanks so much for bearing with us.